faced with a new exam and typically a new season with new TAs. One of the challenges with graduate students or even undergraduates is that you get obviously a lot of turnover from year to year. And so you have students that are coming in that have maybe seen Crowdmark as undergrads, but haven't marked in it, or a lot of international students or just students from other universities won't have even seen Crowdmark at all. And they're fully expecting to get a pile of papers on their desk and they're going to mark them. That's what's going to happen. So the first step is usually department-wide training. So we have that built into our math department where every student at least hears about Crowdmark from someone who knows the system, as a colleague of mine. And she introduces them to the system, lets them know that if they're marking, which almost everybody is in their first year, a large class, then you'll be using Crowdmark, and gives them sort of the quick intro to how it basically works. Then when it comes to the actual exam, in some sense, it's not really different than any other exam. We write up our solutions, try to sketch out typically roughly where we want the marks to distribute on that question for each question. Then what we'll typically do is, especially in a large class, we'll break up the responsibility between the instructors and say, okay, I'll be working with TAs for these 2 questions, you work with those 3 questions. Then we try to go in and actually grade a few questions, because as always, what the students do and what you expect them to do are vastly different, or can be vastly different. And so once we see, typically I would mark about 10 to 20 papers, and then build up my own little comment bank and marking scheme from that. And that's when I'd either ideally meet with the TAs, though for some reason TAs are really reluctant to meet. They'd rather just have an email instruction for the majority of them. Just tell me what I need to do and leave me alone and I'll do it. But ideally it works best if we can meet with the TA and actually have them mark a few papers, and we'll talk that through and see, what do I consider a concept thing versus what they consider a concept versus, just technical errors, and trying to balance that. What did the student write and what can we infer from that about their understanding of the actual material, and trying to make the grade a good gauge for that alignment. And that's typically the most effective. And then we basically let the TAs go at it. And for the scale we're talking for these courses, it's often 15 hours of marking for one test. And so it takes them a while. It's over a span of a week or 10 days typically. And what we try to do is check in and make sure there's no issues. And mostly that works. If the start is good, then it's easy to continue on in that same fashion. So most of the interventions, if we can do them, we try to do them right at the beginning by clearly making sure that we're on the same page with the TA about what's important in this course and what's important in this question. After that, then it's, there's inevitably some issues where students do even more random things than we saw in those first 20 papers or even the next 100. And then that's why we typically have a regrading process where the students can say, I think great, the TA or the marker missed something on question 2 for mine. And then we have a process where usually the instructor goes back in and takes a look at it and says, oh, actually, that's a great approach. It was not what we had in our marking scheme, but you're absolutely right. Or actually, I think you missed the point of this whole question and what you did. And nothing you said there really related to what we wanted you to say. But at least it gives the students that fallback and that extra level of fairness and cross-checking that if something does go wrong, they can get it assessed and reevaluated by someone who does know the course as a whole, not just necessarily that question.